if it ever does.
And speaking of things that have to change, let's talk about the going from one abusive relationship, that being Notre Dame and the ACC, to FSU and the ACC. Full disclosure, I stopped reading the amended complaint. I couldn't make it through there. I could go on for a while, but I won't. But you yourself, sir, are cited, I think, a couple of times in that document. What is it like to be cited in a pleading that is trying to destroy a conference that you have spent a great deal of your career covering?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think that it's interesting that they cited one column in particular, and it's the one they cited is apropos of what we just talked about. The ACC has a Notre Dame problem, and it's not the losing streak, which talked about some of the things we've already talked about. But the things that they cited were things like ACC football is what's put the league in a bad position, and football drives the bus in college athletics, and schools in the ACC don't always act in the conference's best interest. So it's actually interesting what I am cited for in there is very peripheral to Florida State and actually kind of peripheral to the ACC in some ways. That said, one, I think I made a lot of jokes last summer about Florida State's going to go start its own live football league with Boise State and all of its girlfriends from Canada that you don't know. And I do think that there's a little bit of dog chasing the car here where Florida State's going to get a hold of the bumper and be like, what now? If it does, sort of win legally. I mean, most of this to me is when I read these complaints and the pleadings and the arguments, it all feels like very first world problems. I think the root cause of all of this is Florida State's unduly elevated opinion of itself as a football brand, which I thought was, and I'm surprised the ACC hasn't brought this up because, I mean, there's a lot of things that the ACC's lawyers haven't brought up that I would have brought up by now. But number one is, if Florida State is such a big brand, why was it left out of the college football playoff despite being a conference champion? That, to me, suggests that Florida State is maybe not the big swinging, is not the big gun that it thinks it is.
Well, and there is a lot of noise about the stuff in the amended complaint or the second amended complaint, whichever one it is, about implying that the only reason BC got in to the ACC was to help out Chad Swafford is just absurd. But what that complaint is really about, it's just about FSU wanting more money than it can currently get from the ACC. All this other stuff about we were treated unfairly, we've been done wrong, that's just garbage. I mean, that's just complete garbage. It's just we want more money. Let us out of this deal so we can get more money.
Yeah, which is interesting to me because one of the ways that they're arguing that is that Florida State has somehow been defrauded, which is a fantastic claim that you, as a member of an association that you participate in, have somehow been defrauded by that association. You sound like you want to express opinions on that.
Well, I just wanted to say, where is the stuff about what FSU knew, what it was told, what information it had at the time it signed off on the deals? So I'm just saying I would not put a lot of faith or belief in that fraud garbage.
Right. Unfortunately, and I'm not the lawyer, by my reading, that the fraud argument is basically why they should be released. We've been defrauded. We should be released from these documents that were fraudulently agreed upon. But yeah, they really don't do a very good job of clearing what should be a high bar. In this case, even though can't clear even a low bar of how exactly they were defrauded by voluntarily entering into agreements where they have yet to show how they weren't fully informed about. The other part of it is, okay, and again, this is like the dog that catches the car. You say you can make more money if you weren't attached to the ACC. How are you going to do that? The SEC and Big Ten are both basically at this point functioning arms of ESPN and Fox. If they had wanted Florida State would already be out. Like, look at UCLA and USC. Like, look at Oklahoma and Texas. Grant rights, all this stuff. Like, that stuff is all fungible when the pieces start moving. Like, if UNC legitimately has an opportunity to join the Big Ten or SEC, we are not going to be standing around trying to figure out how they're going to get out of the grant of rights. They are going to say, we are out. Come sue us. come find, find the hat. So a lot of this is, part of the problem with Florida State, and this is a Florida State thing. They have a very vocal and political board of trustees. They all think they're football coaches. They all think they're athletic directors. So you have this sort of uh it's almost like a show trial at this point, like this very sort of Stalinist show trial. We're going to put the ACC on, like this entire Florida State's entire legal complaint reads like a message board post, and the message boarders are in control down there, and that's why we are where we are. There is no exit plan here. Whether they're going to put private equity, to live football, like no, like if you were worth that much money, somebody would have offered it to you already, and you wouldn't be scraping together nickels to try to get out of the ACC for this big money plan. So the whole thing to me is kind of a waste of time. That said, circle back around to this. The ACC has left itself open to this. It doesn't communicate well. It relies on statements. It has no public presence. There's no Greg Sankey out there going on Feinbaum. There's no army of surrogates spreading the ACC story. There's just a commissioner who issues statements, and like the ACC championship game. Joe Tessitore's in the booth on an ACC broadcast on ESPN, their business partner, their 50-50 business partner, talking about how Florida State doesn't deserve to be in the championship and any SEC team would be a better fit, or whatever he was saying. It was, SEC propaganda. If I were Jim Phillips, I would have been in that booth at halftime with Jimmy Pitaro on speakerphone saying, we're in business with you guys. Your own guy is in here slagging us. He doesn't have to, stop, at the very least, stop propping up the SEC, stop ripping our own team and our own championship game. Like who are we in business with here? So, but of course that didn't happen. And it ended up being a 4-hour SEC infomercial. But the ACC loses that messaging battle every time. And that's why a school like Florida State, that's full of people who aren't, that message is not getting through to, are suing the ACC like a bunch of message boarders, because they don't believe that the ACC is doing the right things. They believe they've been defrauded. And a lot of that is just the fact that the perception that the league is, I don't want to say incompetent necessarily, but that the league does nothing, that the league is sort of inert.